In the heart of the vast, unforgiving Sahara Desert, where endless sands stretch under a blistering sun, there lies a singular life-giving force, the Nile River. To those who first settled along its banks, it was more than just water. It was the pulse of life itself, a shimmering artery that carved civilization out of barrenness. The Nile is the longest river in the world, flowing more than 4,000 miles from the highlands of East Africa, winding its way northward through countries, mountains, and valleys before spilling into the Mediterranean Sea. But it is in Egypt where this river becomes nothing less than a miracle. For over 5,000 years, the Nile has been Egypt's heart and soul. The people who live there called their land Kemet, the Black Land, named for the rich, fertile soil left behind by the river's annual flooding. Surrounding this life-giving strip of land lay the Red Land, or Dishret, the harsh desert wilderness, lifeless and vast. It was the Nile's gift of renewal that made the Black Land a cradle of civilization. Each year, the rains of distant mountains, the Ethiopian highlands, would swell the Blue Nile tributary. With relentless force, the river would overflow its banks in a rhythmic inundation. For the people of ancient Egypt, this flood was not destruction but rebirth. The water deposited nutrient-rich silt, turning the earth into fertile farmland. Farmers awaited the flood with both reverence and hope. They understood the cycles of the Nile better than anyone, timing their planting and harvesting to its ancient pulse. This deep bond between the people and the river laid the foundation for a culture intertwined with nature and the divine. But this was no simple survival story. The Nile did more than nourish crops. It connected distant villages, serving as a highway for boats carrying goods, people, and ideas. From this lifeline emerged villages which grew into towns and then city-states. Along its banks, the seeds of governance, religion, and culture began to sprout. The river was also a natural border, defining two distinct regions. Upper Egypt, in the narrow southern valley where the Nile rushes between cliffs, and Lower Egypt, the expansive northern delta, where the river fans out into countless channels before meeting the sea. Each region had its own customs, gods, and rulers. The unification of these two lands was one of Egypt's greatest achievements. But before it could happen, there was conflict and competition, diplomacy, and warfare. The Nile united these diverse peoples not only through water but through shared reverence for the river itself, worshipped as the god Hapi, the provider of abundance. This sacred river was central to every aspect of life: agriculture, transport, religion, and kingship. The pharaohs would later claim their right to rule as divinely appointed stewards of the Nile's blessings, the guardians of Ma'at, or cosmic order. But the Nile was not always generous. Periods of drought or insufficient flooding brought famine and instability. These times tested the resilience of the people and the authority of their leaders. The success of Egypt depended on the delicate balance of nature and on human ingenuity in managing the river's gifts. As Egypt evolved, so did its relationship with the Nile. Canals and irrigation systems were built. Granaries were stocked. Rituals and festivals celebrated the river's life-giving power. Temples and cities aligned themselves to the river's flow. The Nile was not just water, it was the axis mundi, the world's spine around which Egyptian civilization revolved. The story of Egypt's rise to empire is not just a tale of gods and pyramids. It is the story of power, ambition, and unity. It begins in a time when the lands of Upper and Lower Egypt were divided, ruled by rival chiefs, each claiming dominion over the fertile banks of the Nile. Imagine the Nile Valley more than 5,000 years ago. Small villages scattered along the river, each ruled by local chieftains. The lands were rich, but fractured. Upper Egypt, with its narrow valleys and rugged cliffs, was home to fierce tribes who wore the tall white crown, the Hedjet. Lower Egypt, the broad delta, was ruled by those who bore the red crown, the Dishret. The symbolism of these crowns was more than decorative. It represented distinct identities, distinct gods, and rival ambitions. But the Nile did not merely divide, it connected. Trade and diplomacy flowed along its waters. Ideas, crafts, and cultures mixed in the growing towns and settlements. Slowly, The people of these two lands began to dream of unity, a powerful kingdom stretching from the southern cataracts to the northern sea. The man who would realize this dream was a figure shrouded in legend and mystery. Narmer, sometimes called Menes. Around 3100 BCE, Narmer emerged from Upper Egypt, a warrior king with vision and might. He was more than a conqueror, he was a unifier. Narmer's triumph is immortalized in a remarkable artifact, the Narmer Palette, a ceremonial stone slab discovered in the ancient city of Hierakonpolis. On one side, he is shown wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, on the other, the red crown of Lower Egypt. In his hand, the Mace of Power, at his feet, the defeated enemies of the unified land. This artifact is not just a symbol of conquest, but the birth certificate of ancient Egypt's first dynasty. With Narmer's victory, two lands became one, a nation bound by the Nile, by culture, and by divine kingship. But what did unification mean for the people? It meant centralized rule, the rise of the pharaoh as both king and god, the establishment of a court administration and a capital, Memphis, at the strategic junction of the two lands. It meant the creation of laws, taxes, and an organized workforce, laying the foundation for an empire. The early pharaohs were seen as intermediaries between the gods and men, ensuring Ma'at, cosmic order, was maintained. Their authority was absolute, but also sacred. The Nile's flooding, the health of crops, the fate of the people all depended on their favor with the gods. The unification ushered in an era of rapid innovation. Writing developed to record transactions and religious texts. Artisans and architects began to build monumental structures, early precursors to the great pyramids to come. Trade networks expanded, bringing gold, ivory, and exotic goods from distant lands. Yet, even with unification, Egypt was a land of contrasts. The desert still loomed large, reminding all that the Nile was both giver and protector. Kings maintained armies, not just for expansion, but for defense against hostile neighbors to the east and south. Narmer's legacy endured for centuries, inspiring generations of pharaohs to strengthen the unity of Egypt, to build cities, temples, and tombs that declared their eternal power. The unification of Egypt set the stage for something monumental, literally. As the pharaohs consolidated their power, they sought to transcend the mortal realm, to claim a place among the gods for eternity. Their greatest achievement? The construction of colossal stone pyramids that would stand as testaments to their divine rule, ambition, and ingenuity. Imagine the desert plateau of Giza. Under the blazing sun, thousands of workers toiling to shape millions of limestone blocks. The sheer scale of this effort is staggering. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, rising 480 feet into the sky, made from over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons. It remained the tallest man-made structure on Earth for more than 3,800 years. But the pyramids were more than tombs. They were sacred mountains, symbolic gateways between Earth and the heavens. The Egyptians believed that the pharaoh's spirit, the Ka, would ascend these stairways of stone to join the gods, ensuring cosmic harmony and prosperity for the land. The story of pyramid building began with earlier mastabas, flat-roofed tombs made of mud brick, evolving through the visionary reign of Pharaoh Djoser. Under his architect Imhotep, the step pyramid at Saqqara rose, a radical innovation that stacked mastabas into a towering stepped structure. This was Egypt's first monumental stone building and a profound leap forward in architectural design. The pyramids also reflect Egypt's mastery of organization and engineering, coordinating thousands of workers, sourcing and transporting massive stones from quarries, planning complex internal chambers. These feats required sophisticated administration, advanced mathematics, and a deep understanding of geometry and astronomy. The alignment of the pyramids to the cardinal points and the stars reveals a civilization attuned to the cosmos. The Great Pyramid is precisely aligned to true north, and some scholars believe its internal shafts correspond to the stars in Orion's belt and Sirius, gods associated with Osiris and Isis, eternal figures in the Egyptian pantheon. These architectural marvels were also political statements. The pyramids declared the pharaoh's absolute power, his divine mandate, and his role as the guardian of Ma'at, the order that maintained balance in the universe. The grandeur of the tombs reflected the grandeur of the king's soul. However, the construction of pyramids was not without sacrifice. The labor force was vast, but recent discoveries have revealed that these were not slaves, as once thought, but skilled workers who took pride in their craft. Villages near the sites show evidence of organized labor, food distribution, medical care, and social hierarchy. The pyramid complexes were more than just burial sites, they were entire sacred landscapes. Temples for the cult of the dead pharaoh, causeways leading to the Nile, and smaller pyramids for queens and nobles dotted the terrain. These were places where the living communed with the dead, where rituals ensured the pharaoh's safe journey to the afterlife. As the Old Kingdom flourished, so, too, did the Egyptian worldview. The afterlife was a continuation of earthly life, but perfected. The Book of the Dead and other funerary texts guided the soul through trials, weighing the heart against the feather of Ma'at. The pharaoh was the first to claim this divine immortality, promising it to his subjects. But all empires face change. By the end of the Old Kingdom, the pyramid-building era waned. The grand monuments stood silent, marking a golden age of faith, power, and human achievement. Political fragmentation and economic difficulties began to challenge the pharaoh's authority. Yet, the legacy of the pyramids endures. Symbols of Egypt's eternal quest to bridge the earthly and the divine, to achieve immortality through stone and spirit. They remain among the most iconic monuments ever created by humankind. To understand ancient Egypt, one must first understand its gods. The people of this ancient civilization did not merely believe in gods, they lived within their presence. Their world was a tapestry woven with divine threads, where the natural and supernatural danced as one, and every sunrise was a miracle, a daily victory of order over chaos. The Egyptian pantheon was vast and intricate, a sprawling family of gods and goddesses, each with unique powers, stories, and domains. From the soaring, falcon-headed Horus to the jackal-headed Anubis, from the nurturing Isis to the fearsome Sekhmet, every deity reflected an aspect of life, nature, or cosmic truth. Central to Egyptian religion was the concept of Ma'at, the divine order that governed the universe, justice, truth, and balance. Pharaohs were seen as the earthly guarantors of Ma'at, tasked with preserving harmony between humans, gods, and nature. Egyptian mythology tells of creation itself, a primeval ocean called Nun, out of which the first god, Adam, emerged. From Adam came the sun god Ra, who journeyed daily across the sky in his solar bark, battling the serpent of chaos, Apophis, to ensure the dawn. This eternal struggle symbolized the delicate balance of life and death, light and darkness. The myths were not distant fairy tales, they were lived realities. The gods could intervene in daily life through dreams, omens, and rituals. Magic, or Heka, was a sacred force, a gift from the gods, wielded by priests, healers, and even common people to protect, heal, and influence the world. Temples were the homes of gods on earth, grand, mysterious places where the divine presence dwelled behind closed doors. Only priests could enter the innermost sanctuaries to tend the god statue, offer sacrifices, and perform rituals that maintained Ma'at. The afterlife was equally infused with divine presence. The soul's journey beyond death was a perilous adventure through the underworld, the Duat, guided by spells and protected by gods like Anubis and Thoth. The weighing of the heart against the feather of Ma'at determined the soul's fate, eternal bliss or obliteration. Magic permeated all levels of society. Amulets, spells, and charms were worn and recited to ward off evil, cure illness, or secure fertility. The famous Book of the Dead was a compendium of magical texts guiding souls and the living alike. This profound spiritual framework shaped everything: art, architecture, law, and daily customs. Festivals celebrated the gods' mythic deeds, reenacted in grand ceremonies that united the people in shared faith and hope. The gods themselves were deeply connected to the land. The Nile's life-giving floods were seen as blessings from Hapi. The fierce lioness goddess Sekhmet embodied both destruction and healing, reminding all of the dual forces of nature. Through thousands of years, this rich religious tradition evolved, absorbing new gods and ideas, adapting to changing political realities while maintaining an unbroken reverence for the divine. As the Old Kingdom's monumental pyramids weathered centuries of desert winds, Egypt itself faced a time of turmoil and change. The great, centralized power of the pharaohs fractured. The land was plunged into chaos, a dark era historians call the First Intermediate Period. Yet, from this period of fragmentation and struggle arose a new dawn, the Middle Kingdom, Egypt's Renaissance, a golden age of art, culture, and renewed unity. The Middle Kingdom began around 2050 BCE with the rise of a powerful ruler from the city of Thebes in Upper Egypt, Mentuhotep II. This king reunified the fractured lands, restoring order after decades of civil war and political chaos. His reign marked the rebirth of Egypt, a return to the ideals of the Old Kingdom, but with a fresh vision. Unlike the towering pyramids of old, the Middle Kingdom kings focused on consolidating power through building a strong, centralized state. They reformed the administration, strengthening the bureaucracy and legal system to govern a sprawling, diverse empire. They commissioned art and literature that reflected the concerns and hopes of their people, not just royal grandeur. One of the greatest achievements of the Middle Kingdom was its literature. For the first time, stories, wisdom texts, and poetry flourished. Works like the Tale of Sinew and Instructions of Amenemhat reveal a sophisticated society deeply reflective of human experience, themes of loyalty, exile, and justice. The Middle Kingdom also saw significant advances in architecture. While the massive pyramids were no longer the primary focus, elaborate mortuary temples, rock-cut tombs, and fortifications sprang up across the land. The pharaohs fortified borders against foreign threats and expanded trade into Nubia and the Near East, increasing Egypt's wealth and influence. Religion continued to evolve. New gods and cults gained prominence, such as the worship of Osiris, god of the afterlife and resurrection. The pharaoh's role as divine mediator became even more pronounced, with rituals emphasizing the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, reflecting the hopes of a people emerging from darkness. This era also witnessed a flourishing of craftsmanship, jewelry, pottery, and finely carved statues. The Middle Kingdom artists brought a new realism to their work, depicting human emotions and daily life with unprecedented detail. The Middle Kingdom's capital at Thebes became a cultural and religious hub, its temples echoing with chants and ceremonies honoring the gods. The spirit of renewal infused every aspect of Egyptian life, from the soaring columns of temples to the verses inscribed on tomb walls. Yet, beneath this golden age lay challenges: internal dissent, threats from rival tribes, and the pressures of managing a growing empire demanded constant vigilance. Still, for nearly 400 years, the Middle Kingdom endured as a beacon of stability and creativity. By the end of this period, Egypt had not only restored its unity, but prepared the ground for a new age of empire, one defined by military conquest, diplomatic reach, and unparalleled wealth. The New Kingdom. Egypt's history is a long epic of grandeur, but even the mightiest kingdoms face upheaval. Following the golden glow of the Middle Kingdom came a turbulent time, the Second Intermediate Period, marked by foreign invasion and internal division. This era would test Egypt's resilience and set the stage for its greatest empire. Around 1650 BCE, a new force arrived in the Nile Delta, the Hyksos, a Semitic people from Levant. Their arrival was not a simple invasion, but a gradual migration that culminated in their control of Lower Egypt. The Hyksos introduced new technologies, including the horse and chariot, advanced bronze weapons, and new styles of fortification. The Egyptian rulers of Thebes in the south struggled to contain this powerful foreign presence. For decades, Egypt was divided. The Hyksos ruled the north from their capital at Avaris, while native Egyptians held the south. The country was fractured once more. But this conflict forged a new Egyptian identity shaped by the need to resist and reclaim their homeland. The Hyksos' influence left a mixed legacy. They introduced innovations that Egyptians would later adopt and adapt, fueling military and technological advances. Yet their dominance was seen as a humiliation, a foreign yoke to be overturned. The struggle culminated in the reign of a Theban prince named Ahmose I. Around 1550 BCE, Ahmose launched a series of military campaigns that would drive the Hyksos out of Egypt, reunifying the kingdom and ending the Second Intermediate Period. Ahmose's victory marked the birth of the new kingdom, Egypt's imperial age. No longer content with defense alone, the pharaohs of this era pursued expansionist policies, building an empire that stretched deep into Nubia to the south and into the Levant to the northeast. The New Kingdom pharaohs were warrior kings, divine rulers who led armies, commanded diplomacy, and sponsored grand building projects. They transformed Egypt into the most powerful state of the ancient world, shaping history for centuries. This was the age of famous rulers like Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh who redefined kingship with her magnificent mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri; Thutmose III, the military genius who expanded Egypt's borders to their greatest extent; and Ramses II the Great, whose monuments and military campaigns secured Egypt's place in history. The New Kingdom also saw a flowering of art, religion, and culture. The temples of Karnak and Luxor grew into vast complexes, centers of religious life and political power. The worship of Ammonius-Re, a fusion of the sun god Ra and the mysterious god Ammonius, became dominant, symbolizing the unity and strength of the empire. Egyptian society became more complex, with an elite class of scribes, priests, and nobles supporting the pharaoh's divine mission. Trade and diplomacy flourished, connecting Egypt with distant kingdoms in Africa and Asia. Yet, this age of empire was not without challenges. Constant warfare, political intrigue, and religious upheaval tested the pharaoh's authority. The later New Kingdom would see internal strife and external pressures that foreshadowed the eventual decline of ancient Egypt's power. But for now, the New Kingdom stood at the pinnacle of history, a civilization of gods and kings, warriors and priests, builders and dreamers. The Nile continued to flow, the sun to rise, and the eternal cycle of life and death to turn. When we speak of ancient Egypt's grandeur, few names echo louder than Ramses II, Ramses the Great. His reign, spanning over 6 decades from 1279 to 1213 BCE, was a defining chapter in Egypt's imperial saga, an age of monumental architecture, military prowess, and cultural brilliance. Ramses was born into a world where Egypt stood as a superpower, but his vision was to elevate it even further to eternal glory. Known as the Great Ancestor by later pharaohs, Ramses' ambition was to carve his name into history with unprecedented force. He was a warrior king. One of his most famous battles, the Battle of Kadesh, fought against the Hittites in modern-day Syria, stands as one of the largest chariot battles ever recorded. Though the battle ended in a stalemate, Ramses portrayed it as a decisive victory, a testament to his courage and leadership. The peace treaty that followed is the earliest surviving international agreement, marking a sophisticated era of diplomacy. But Ramses' legacy was not forged solely on the battlefield. He was a master builder, commissioning an array of monumental projects that continue to awe the world. The temples at Abu Simbel, carved into sandstone cliffs, proclaim his divine kingship through colossal statues that greet the desert sun. The grandeur of his mortuary temple, the Ramesseum, and expansions at Karnak testify to his devotion to the gods and the might of his reign. These constructions were more than political propaganda. They were spiritual expressions designed to link the pharaoh eternally with the divine. Ramses claimed to be the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon god, protector of kingship, and his image was everywhere, in statues, reliefs, and inscriptions. Ramses also secured Egypt's internal stability. His administration was efficient, supported by an army that guarded borders and a bureaucracy that maintained order and prosperity. Trade flourished, bringing gold, lapis lazuli, incense, and exotic goods from across Africa and the Near East. Yet, beyond the grand narratives of war and building, Ramses was a man shaped by family and faith. He fathered over 100 children, ensuring a royal lineage. His queen, Nefertari, was immortalized alongside him in temples and poetry, reflecting the importance of royal partnership in maintaining divine balance. Ramses' reign was not without challenges. The constant threat of rebellion, economic pressures, and the sheer logistics of managing an empire demanded relentless effort. His long rule was marked by a complex interplay of tradition and innovation, balancing reverence for the past with the needs of a changing world. As his life drew to a close, Ramses ensured his legacy would endure. He declared himself a god, a protector of Egypt for all eternity, promising to safeguard Ma'at beyond death. His tomb in the Valley of the Kings, richly decorated and filled with treasures, was designed to secure his immortality. Ramses the Great remains an icon of ancient Egypt's might, a symbol of ambition, devotion, and the unyielding human desire to be remembered. His name carved in stone, his legacy woven into the fabric of history, he embodies the glory and mystery of a civilization that continues to captivate the world. The grandeur of Egypt's new kingdom eventually gave way to a period of profound change and challenge, a twilight era where the ancient pharaohs faced new realities. Though the land of the Nile still shimmered with temples and monuments, the forces that once made Egypt a superpower began to wane. This period, beginning around 1100 BCE, was marked by internal strife, foreign invasions, and shifting religious ideas. It was a time when the old certainties faltered and Egypt's timeless civilization adapted to survive in a changing world. Several factors contributed to the decline of the new kingdom's imperial dominance. Constant warfare drained resources, while the administrative machinery struggled to manage an expansive empire facing growing external threats. One of the most significant blows came from the so-called Sea Peoples, mysterious maritime raiders who swept across the eastern Mediterranean, destabilizing established powers. Egypt faced these invaders under the reign of Ramses III, whose victory was celebrated but at great cost, weakening the kingdom's strength. Internally, Egypt grappled with political fragmentation. The central authority of the pharaohs diminished as powerful priesthoods, especially the priests of Ammonius at Thebes, amassed wealth and influence rivaling the throne. This shift heralded a new dynamic in Egyptian power, where religion and politics intertwined in complex ways. Economically, the kingdom faced challenges from disrupted trade routes and agricultural difficulties. Periodic famines and droughts exacerbated social tensions, and uprisings broke out in various regions. Despite these troubles, Egypt's cultural and religious life remained vibrant and inventive. New religious movements gained prominence, such as the rise of the god Osiris as the universal judge of the dead, and later, the radical monotheistic experiment of Akhenaten, who worshipped the sun disk Aten. Akhenaten's reign in the 14th century BCE was revolutionary and controversial. He shifted the religious focus away from the traditional pantheon to a single god, Aten, and moved the capital to a new city, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna. This upheaval disrupted centuries of tradition, challenging the priesthood and society's religious fabric. Though Akhenaten's reforms were largely reversed after his death, they left a lasting imprint on Egypt's spiritual landscape, introducing ideas about divine unity and personal relationship with the divine. The later years of the New Kingdom saw increasing foreign influence, invasions from Libyans, Nubians, and eventually Assyrians, signaling the waning of Egypt's political power. The pharaohs struggled to maintain control, and by the end of the 11th century BCE, Egypt entered another period of fragmentation, the Third Intermediate Period. Yet, even as political power slipped, Egypt's cultural legacy endured. Art, literature, and religious thought continued to flourish, influencing neighboring civilizations and leaving a heritage that still captivates scholars and dreamers alike. The twilight of the pharaohs was not just an end, but also a transformation. A testament to a civilization's resilience in the face of change, a civilization whose echoes we still hear in the stones of temples and the myths passed through millennia, as the sands of time buried the last pharaohs and the mighty temples fell silent. Ancient Egypt did not simply vanish into the past. Instead, its legacy flowed like the Nile itself, enduring, nourishing, and shaping civilizations for millennia to come. The story of Egypt's influence is one of rebirth and rediscovery. From the classical world of Greece and Rome to the Renaissance scholars of Europe, Egypt's achievements inspired awe and emulation, its mysteries igniting imaginations across time and culture. The Greeks regarded Egypt as the cradle of wisdom. Herodotus, the father of history, traveled the Nile and marveled at its monuments, recording tales that blended fact and legend. Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, but embraced its culture, founding Alexandria, a city that became a beacon of learning, where scholars preserved Egyptian knowledge and blended it with Greek thought. The Romans continued this admiration, adopting Egyptian religious symbols and practices. The cult of Isis spread across the empire, a testament to the enduring power of Egyptian spirituality. But Egypt's influence extended beyond religion and philosophy. Its innovations in architecture, medicine, mathematics, and engineering laid foundations for future civilizations. The pyramids remain marvels of design and endurance, symbols of human ambition and ingenuity. Hieroglyphs, once a lost script, were deciphered in the 19th century by Jean-François Champollion, unlocking Egypt's vast written heritage and sparking a new era of Egyptology. This rediscovery fueled fascination with Egypt, influencing art, literature, and popular culture. In modern times, Egypt's ancient monuments attract millions, a bridge connecting us to a distant past. Archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new insights into this civilization's complexity, its politics, religion, daily life, and extraordinary achievements. The Nile's rhythms, the enduring myths, and the colossal temples remind us that ancient Egypt was not just a civilization, but a profound human story of faith, power, creativity, and the eternal search for meaning. As the sun sets over the endless sands and the Nile continues its eternal flow, the story of ancient Egypt remains alive, a testament to the power of human creativity, faith, and resilience. From the first farmers who tamed a river's floods to the mighty pharaohs who shaped an empire, Egypt's legacy is etched in stone, story, and spirit. Though its empire faded, the echoes of Egypt continue to inspire. Its monuments remind us of ambition. Its myths whisper of mysteries yet unsolved, and its history teaches us about the enduring quest for meaning. Ancient Egypt was more than a civilization. It was a dream made real, a civilization that dared to defy time. And as long as we remember, that dream lives on. Thank you for journeying with us through the rise of an empire that changed the world forever.